What I saw and what I heard wasn't what any little kid is supposed to go through. I'm craving the next party. I'm craving the next moment I get to drink or have some drug or have sex, anything. I remember the cops had come there and they had taken me to jail, and I had stayed there this was the first time I went to jail, and I never thought that would happen either. I wanted to feel happy. I wanted something to give me an upper. That's what I needed a lot. Hi, my name is Gelana and I am from South Carolina, and currently I'm at Kingdom Domain College. So I grew up in a very toxic environment with my parents and my brothers, and I saw a lot of things that I shouldn't have seen as a little girl, and I heard things I shouldn't have heard. Stuff that mentally messed me up and things that really affected my life moving forward with my parents, because it was a very unstable relationship. Although my parents came from Christian families, like a Christian background, a year after my dad had married my mom, he just got really into like heavy drinking and just becoming abusive. And what I saw and what I heard wasn't what any little kid is supposed to go through. Being younger and seeing and hearing these things that would happen between my parents, my mom would make us cover up a lot and like never tell anybody what we were going through. And I remember a lot of moments. I remember how much I would panic as a little girl, even just like growing up throughout the years, and my brothers as well. Like our parents would tell us that we can't say anything about what's going on, especially my mom. So it's like we had to hide a lot of things that we heard and saw. And I remember I would just go into my room and I'd just start panicking. My mind would just go crazy because those moments, they were just terrifying. So I remember during these moments that were terrifying, I would call my older brother and I would try to get him to come help because there was nobody else we could call when we were going through these things. And though my oldest brother, he would be partying, so there was no way for him to come help us. Or so that's like what we went through a lot. Like hiding all that was really hard because it was scary seeing my dad the way that he was when he would come home drunk. And my mom would try to keep I remember a moment where my mom would try to oh god, this is hard. And I would just sit. Like, I just remember being younger and I would always try to be chasing after him. And like, I remember just when we were all outside, he was just obviously in his not the right state of mind. And I was trying to get to him, and my mom would just hold me back and I didn't let me go towards him. He was just obviously. And I remember bawling my eyes out and feeling pain from that moment. And that really hurt because it's like I grew up and I would see people getting that love that they got from their dad. And I would be missing that. And it hurt a lot. So yeah. So since I had lacked a lot of attention from my dad, as I grew older, that's what I realized, how my mind was working. And I craved a male's attention so much that I would do anything to get it. I remember how much also I'd stopped going to church continuously, like when I was around 17, 18. I remember like my brothers already had stopped going and I was the last one that fell off from church, so I stopped going. I remember I went to this New Year's party with my two best friends at the time, a church New Year's party, and I remember how absolutely boring it was. And I remember always, growing up, I felt like I was missing so much inside. I would always ask myself, like, is this literally all I have to live for? Like, there has to be something out there because I feel empty. Like, I felt very empty a lot of my life. And so after this New Year's party, at the time I was talking to some guy. He was kind of a friend, but he was giving me attention and I was feeding off of that. And he had invited me to a party and I knew nothing about drinking really. I never really drank much before then. And so I was excited for it. I remember how I felt. And I had brought my good friend along with me as well. And we had went to this party and I remember drinking, and it's like I've never felt more alive. I've it's like it felt like I finally found something that I was meant for on this earth. I did not understand anything about God. I just thought that this was my purpose on earth, was to have fun in the wrong way and just live in sin. So this was 17, 18 years old, and at that point in my life, I had zero self-control. I would literally try anything that I could get my hands on, anything that was offered. And I remember just the first thing that I guess I tried after drinking, because it's like you would just add on addictions. That's what I would do. So I would try weed, and I didn't really care for it, but I just wanted anything that was basically that could give me some sort of feeling, because I liked the high that I would get from these things. And as the years would go by, I would just collect more like toxic friends, guys, and when I guess this was actually when I was 18 years old, or 17, 18, and I had met this guy, and this was actually still at church. And I remember seeing him, and it's like right away it was like I was obsessed, and it was like it worked both ways. Like he was obsessed with me and it's like the other way around. And for 3 years that was a very toxic relationship, and I know that had a lot to do with how I grew up seeing my parents. So it's like it was emotionally abusive, and it was mentally abusive and physically abusive relationship, and it was so unhealthy. And I I remember when the relationship ended, it's just like my party lifestyle seemed to just get worse and worse. Like I just couldn't be happy anymore. Like it's like I fell into a deep hole of depression, and I would mask my pain a lot by doing more drinking, more bad friends, more just getting into drugs. I remember after my relationship ended with this guy, it's like I seem to have fallen into like a hole of just rebounding, and after that it's like my heart completely closed, and it's like I would never let anyone into it again. And just remember how easy it was for me to just move on from these guys. It's like I kept trying to find someone that could fill my emptiness. I would just I would go from one guy to the next. I would have sleep with him, and it's like they would be such short relationships, and they weren't even relationships. It was just friends with benefits. It felt like to me it was never serious again. I was just like in my head, I was just having a fun time, even though I was hurting people along the way. And that was like years of that. And it's like I didn't know how to stop myself from being that person anymore. It just got worse, progressively worse. So since I was so deep into this party lifestyle, I couldn't focus on reality at all. It's like my whole life I was living in some la la land. Um, I was in nursing school at one point, and I had failed that because I couldn't, it's like in my mind, I couldn't prioritize the right things in my life. I was prioritizing all the wrong things. And I remember how negative I was towards myself and how much I cursed myself over and over. And I did not realize how powerful words were before. But it's like I was slowly just breaking myself down. And it's like my mind would just get crazier. And it would be suicidal. I would always have these thoughts about just dying. But I knew deep down that that wasn't an option because I knew there was a heaven. I knew there was a hell. So obviously I didn't want to go to hell, but it wasn't enough to go to God. I remember just when I was in nursing school, I remember how my thought process was during the week. It's like I would have so much irritation. I would get agitated really easily because it's like I'm craving the next party. I'm craving the next moment I get to drink or have some drug or have sex, anything, because I wanted to feel happy. I wanted something to give me an upper. That's what I needed a lot. And so I'd be looking forward to these parties, and I would binge drink for days in a row. And then I would have to snap back out of it, and it would be so difficult for me, I remember. So the older I got, the more I got into the use of heavier drugs. I remember I've tried cocaine in my life, and I loved how that made me feel. And I remember as I would collect friends that weren't good for me, they would offer me other things. Like I have tried ecstasy, I've tried Molly, and I remember how I felt using these drugs and how much of a serotonin boost it would give me. Um, and I remember it's like I was always trying to find these things from people. I wanted to buy them on the moments that were hard in my life. Like I never ran to anything but drinking or drugs or sex. I remember there were 3 big events that actually happened in my life before I came to KDC. The first one being, so I've driven many times in my life, but I never thought it could get to the point where I'm just completely blacked out and I end up somewhere and I don't realize it. Like usually I would remember things when I was driving, like the next day I would remember these events. And there was this one time when I was coming back from a party, and I remember I woke up and it's like 6 in the morning. I'm on the side of the highway and my head's on the wheel, and this is like 15 minutes driving, going home. And I remember how freaked out I got, and I've never had that happen in my life before. I didn't realize my drinking got that bad, but that didn't stop me from continuing what I was doing. The second thing that happened to me, I remember, was me getting into a car accident. So there was this one night I was coming back from a party, and I had met up with this guy, and I was having sex with him. And I remember after that, I was driving back home. I remember I hit a car, and that woke me up from my drunken state. And I remember panicking, and I was at the stoplight with this car, and they came up to my window, and they were telling me to stay there. And I remember I was panicking, and I called that guy that I was with, and I was like asking, what am I supposed to do? I'm freaking out. I'm like 2 minutes from home at this point. And he tells me to just drive off, and that was already my thought process. So I decided as soon as that light turned green, I drove straight home, and I remember driving 80 on a 25, and it was raining outside a little bit. So on this curve, I went straight into a huge boulder on the side and completely totaled my car. And I just remember that couple that I had hit, they had stopped there. They drove after me after calling the cops and getting my license plate. And I just remember them trying to get me out of my car. It's like the windows were busted, like glass was everywhere, and I'm just like bleeding. And I'm like, it's like I remember just feeling so off, and like everything was just flashing in front of my eyes. Like, they put me in the car, they had taken me home, and they had brought me inside my house and just laid me down. And I remember all the lights turned on in the house. This was late at night, and my whole family just sees me like that. And I remember thinking, I'm like, my life is over, like, completely. Like, this is the biggest mess I've ever created. And I thought, like, I was just gonna die at that moment. Yeah. And I remember the cops had come there, and they had taken me to jail. And I had stayed there this was the first time I went to jail, and I never thought that would happen either. And I had stayed there for like 16 hours or so. But even after this car accident, I still continued to drink and party with people. I had these two people that were very close to my heart. It was a best friend that I've had in my life for 2 years, and a guy that I had a friends with benefits toxic relationship with. And these two people, they ended up really hurting me, and the relationships were just very unhealthy with them. I just remember thinking that there's no way that anybody will ever hurt me like that again, and then it just happened with them too. And I remember when I dropped them both out of my life and allowed them back in, I had spent 3 days with the girl that I was best friends with, and she, on the third day, I remember I was happy. At least I thought I was. And I remember I just went to my room, and I'm just like, just on my bed, and she called me, and she told me there's something that she needs to tell me, or she texted me that there's something that she needs to tell me. And after hearing that, then I won't want to be friends with her anymore. That's what she told me. And I remember just panicking, and so I'm like, what could possibly get wrong after everything already like that happened with these people? And she starts telling me that we can meet up, and I'm just waiting there like I'm ready to go. And I start calling her. I'm like, you're gonna have to tell me now, because I need to hear it, because it's like the more I wait, the more anxious I get. It took a minute to get the words out, but I remember hearing the phrase, I had slept with him, this person. And I remember how painful that was, because I just like, I remember my heart just dropping. So I remember from that moment, like, my heart dropped, and I remember how it felt like my world just turned upside down. After this phone call with that girl that I was best friends with, after just that heart dropping moment in my life, I remember it's like my world turned just completely black and white. And I didn't, at that point, it's like I had no idea who I should run to anymore. So there was like nobody I could talk to about it, at least in the moment, because it's like it just happened. My mind couldn't even process the information that I got, because I didn't think that there would be anything that would like hurt me that bad again. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna run straight to alcohol, because that's all I ever knew. So I remember the anxiety I felt. I remember how bad I was shaking when I had went to my car because I was like, I need to get out of this house. So then I had decided to just go to the gas station because it's like that was the closest place I could think of that I could get something at. So I had decided to buy some drinks and just drink something in my car so I could calm myself down because it's been a long time since I've gotten that shaky, and I needed something to calm down my nerves so I couldn't think anymore. I just want anything possible that could help me forget. So then after buying that, I remember I would just go to the parking garage, I would just turn my really loud music on, and I remember just trying to text anybody I possibly could so I could find some sort of drug to make me happy because I didn't even know what else to do at that point because I didn't know how to speak to God. I never thought about that. And so after finding out all this news or whatever, I somehow reconnected with my friend that I was best friends with when I was going to church when I was younger, and I just had reconnected with her, and I remember I met up with her in the car, and that's when I finally told her, I was like, I'm tired of hiding things from you. Like, I want to tell you the truth because I need someone to talk to about it. And she told me she said she knew I was hiding things. Then I remember just sitting in the car telling her my story and just crying to her. And then I remember her mentioning to me about going to Bible college, and in my head I remember it's like it kind of offended me or something, because I was like, why would I go to Bible college? Like, and this one girl from Spartanburg is going to go to Bible college. To me, that didn't make sense. So it's like automatically I basically was like, no, I'm not going to go there. And she was saying, it's just a thought. And that was it. And I remember how I told God in my head, I was like, okay, if something here happens in South Carolina, this specific thing doesn't work out with this person, then I'm gonna go. And that thing happened. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to Bible college because there's nothing left in South Carolina. There's nothing holding me there anymore. Like, I need more. I need to grow because my life, I'm just spiraling and going in circles consistently, and I just got tired of it. I remember I also had this mentor back in South Carolina, just a lady that would help me and pray for me as much as she could. She would always try to invite me to things there so that I could get closer to God, because I had told her, I was like, I'm done living in the past. Like, I'm done living the lifestyle that I'm living. I want to go to God. So then I had applied for KDC, but I remember telling her, I was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to make this payment. It's $7,000. That's like a lot for me. And it's like, I was finally saving up money in South Carolina, and I didn't want to just blow it on Bible college because to me, deep down, it wasn't important. And I told her that, and I remember she said to just trust God with finances. And I've never done that in my life. I never just sat there and told God, I trust you with my finances. I did everything with my own strength. And so 2 days later, after I sitting there in my bed telling God, I trust you with my finances, I remember she started texting me, and then she called me and told me, she's like, hey, there's someone that wants to pay the full amount. It's just an anonymous person. And I remember hearing that news, and I just started crying because I was like, I didn't even know that could happen. Like, that someone would just pay $7,000. That was insane to me. That's how God came in so quick too. Um, so I still had an addiction. I remember I was driving from South Carolina, just a cross country road trip to California with my brother, and I vaped for like 5 to 7 years or something, and I remember I was on nicotine pouches so I could wean myself off vaping, and I tried to stop. I remember on the way to California, and I remember getting to California, and it's like I couldn't stop using them. I was still addicted. It was hard for me to get off of them because when I would have really bad withdrawals, and then I would just go straight to buying some more nicotine pouches. Um, and I remember coming to KDC, it's like I was running away from myself. That's why I ran to California for Bible college, but it didn't change anything. Um, I was very depressed, and it felt my life just completely flipped upside down into this new world of things I just didn't understand. The language here that I didn't understand because I've never been surrounded by so many people that are just like spiritual people that absolutely love God and love people. I've never been around that like here. And I remember I would always want to go home. It's like every single day I'm like ready to pack everything and just leave back to South Carolina, even though deep down I knew that that would get me nowhere. I would just go back into living what I was doing before. The first 3 months of KDC were very hard for me. And on top of it, just struggling with nicotine was really hard. And I remember how much it just controlled me completely. I would be talking to people and my mind would go straight to when do I get my next pouch of nicotine? And I would just get so irritated listening to people talk to me. I couldn't even listen to them anymore. And I remember I was itching to leave all the time because nothing mattered still. I was still in that state of mind of depression. And I remember it's like I was tired of feeling like that, so I tried stopping that. So there was this one day, there was like a few hours went by and I didn't have any nicotine pouch. And I was talking to someone from South Carolina. I remember how bad my withdrawals were, and I was so negative, and it sounded like I was just that person told me they were so worried for me. I ended the call like really quick because I was angry. I was so frustrated. Like I was crying to this person and they called me back and they were like, "Are you okay? I was really worried about you." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm good," because I popped in another nicotine pouch and that was just an example of my withdrawals. And after 3 months at KDC in December, I reached out to one of my mentors, Natasha, and I texted her, and everybody's on Christmas break and I'm just alone in the house and I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, at this point, like I am exhausted of using these nicotine pouches because they're controlling my mind. And I told her, I was like, "Can you please pray for me because I don't want to use them anymore." And I remember her texting me and telling me, she's like, okay, we're praying for you," or "I'm praying for you, and just ask the Holy Spirit to help you." And I didn't understand Holy Spirit still then. I didn't know how to talk to him. I just remember standing in the kitchen thinking, okay, I asked the Holy Spirit, I was like, "Please help me stop using these nicotine pouches, or like not go get more and not have any withdrawals," because that's what I was really worried about. And I remember that night, hours go by and I realized I'm like, there's literally no withdrawals. It's like the Holy Spirit completely took them away. And that was crazy. So shortly after I had quit using nicotine pouches, I was invited to go to this Revelation church in Los Angeles with some KDC girls and just other people in FFM. And I said I was going, but I also remember backing out of it and one of the girls just calling me and saying, "Hey, so why don't you want to go anymore?" And I'm like, "I don't know, I'm just not feeling it. Like, I just don't want to go." Like, none of it wasn't interesting to me at all. Like, I couldn't enjoy worship at all. Like, I couldn't enjoy the charismatic churches. I didn't know how to get into it. But somehow she persuaded me and told me, she's like, "Hey, I think you should go. I think you're meant to be there." And I was like, "Okay, whatever. I'm just gonna go because I mean, I have nothing else to do anyways." So I go to this Revelation church, and I remember I was just like, okay, at this point, I was like, I just don't expect anything to happen anymore with me because it's been months. And I remember there was songs I hated from KDC, and it would be just the song. It was like, "When I Move My Body" or something, "When I Move My Feet," like that. This song that really I hated so much, and something like that started playing, a similar song or that song. And I remember a girl, she just kind of grabbed my hand and she was trying to pull me up to the front to start dancing or something. And I remember I was just thinking like, oh my goodness, like I have to do this. So I just like, I remember I started moving my feet a little bit and I felt so paralyzed. So it's like I stopped for a minute and then I was like, no, I have to get past myself. So I continued moving my feet and like dancing this song. And before I knew it, I was just dancing with complete joy, and I'm just like dancing with all the people around me, and I'm just like, I'm so into it. It's like I don't even know where all this energy came from because I haven't had that in so long. And I'm just like happy to see everybody around me and everybody's just like smiling at me. It's like they finally see that and they're so happy to see me this way. After this church service, I was in a circle with friends and I remember everybody's just chatting and I'm just standing there and I'm not even in the like I'm in the conversation, but I'm not talking because I'm thinking about how happy I finally am. This is like the first time I actually felt joy and peace in my life. And I remember just looking at the girl next to me and thinking, I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, I actually feel happy. I'm like, I can't believe this actually happened. And she's like smiling and all happy for me. And I remember I had, like, after that, I remember I had this fear, like, oh, like, what if this was just this night and that's it? Like, it's not going to continue. But it's just like my life progressively, it just kept getting better and better. It's like that's when God started working on my mind and like I started just getting more positive. Like it's like there was no room for negativity anymore. And it's like I could finally I finally let God work on me, and it's like my real self finally came out, and it's like that's when I started knowing who I was in Christ, and like I started understanding who I was, like all the character traits that I had, because before I was lost and I didn't know who I was at all. Like I couldn't tell anyone the good qualities. So before I didn't understand how much praise actually affected a human. This is like after this encounter that I had with God at the Revelation Church. I realized how powerful praise actually is. And it's like through that praise, it's like this veil was just completely lifted off and my world finally turned colorful. And it's like I was happy again. Um and then throughout all that and just like it was like I remember Kingdom Domain conference came up and it's like it just got even better. I remember I started flagging finally. It's like I started dancing and I just remember being in the back of this like huge conference and I'm like people are around me. It's like I just didn't care anymore. I didn't care what I was doing. I didn't care how I looked. I was just having such an amazing time flagging and just dancing and singing. It's like I was finally singing from my heart. And um yeah, throughout all this, it's like every day I was finally able to love people the right way. It's like my eyes are opening to all the people around me, and it's like I was finally letting them in truly. And I started loving on people and realizing that I was actually meant to be here at Kingdom Domain. I remember after I got my encounter with God, and he was just finally working on my mind. It's like I started craving actual relationships with people. I knew that I was missing out. It's like I was missing out on these amazing people around me that were there to teach me and to show me how to love. I remember just giving the whole class like a whole formal apology and apologizing and how I treated them and how I was before and because I knew I wasn't treating them right fairly. And also it's like after that I was able to finally catch the negative thoughts that weren't from me, weren't from God, and I would just rebuke those thoughts, like, finally. Like, the negative thoughts of, like, oh, I'm not meant to be at KDC. It's, like, just a little bunch of negative thoughts that weren't for me, and it's, like, after that, I started becoming more confident. I started becoming more bold. Like, I started going up to the mic more, and it's, like, I wanted to finally go into my true identity with Christ because it's like the more I got from Jesus, the more happier I got and the more higher I felt in a healthy way. And it's like I just wanted more. Like every single day I'm like I want more of you because I love how I feel and loved how I was finally able to step into my true self. My name is Gelana, and this is my story for His glory.